said I was not lit. We're missing Jonas. Jeannie, are you in charge of that? All right. I would not argue with that.
Yom Zel Yisrael, this day is a day of Sabbath rest and joy as we prepare to welcome Shabbat. First, we take a moment to welcome Shabbat. So if you haven't remembered to breathe this week, now is a good time. Breathe. And for those who are watching at home, and we know from our streaming numbers a few people are, hopefully it's because you're just resting and having Shabbat rest and not because you're ill. Although if you are, we wish you strength in time to come. So I'm waving to anybody in streaming land. For the rest of us, take a deep breath. It's Shabbat. It's that time of year when even the late service, the sun is still setting. And we can actually see for another 10 or 20 minutes how beautiful that reflection garden is. And this is the time of year that you might want to take advantage of that reflection garden. I always remember to go out and enjoy it in July, and that lasts for about 3 minutes. So this is a really good time of year during the week or before or after service. It's a beautiful place, and if you didn't know that, some of you do, the inscriptions and much of the design and artwork comes from the last congregation. So if you didn't even know we had a reflection garden, there it is, the time of year when you can see it. And I say it because if you could hear the water, which you can't, and if you could sit in the rustling wind, you'd have a Shabbat moment. Since we can't, I'm going to ask you here to turn to one another, to look for a new face, to wish each other Shabbat Shalom, and to let it into your midst, your presence. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, may they inspire us with their light, with the hope for the week to come, a week of light and peace and wholeness. We turn to page 120. We welcome Shabbat with the lighting of Shabbat candles. And thank you, Sonia, for lighting the Shabbat candles for us. I know. Oh, yeah, I know. That's the test. That's like the final Shabbat can come if you can light the candle. Thank you. Just have one of those little torches.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotov v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. Thank you, son. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotov v'tzivanu le'adlik Page 125, let's read together. Where has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the task accomplished. Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain, the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let me keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let me be free of the burdens that must return. On this day, Shabbat Abba. Help me to withdraw for a while from the flight of time. Contain the retreat of the hours and days from the grasp of frantic life. Let me learn to pause, if only for this day. Let me find peace on this day. Let me enter into a quiet world this day. On this day, Shabbat Abba. Page 128, how lovely this Sabbath day of rest. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. Kabbalat Shabbat prepares us for Shabbat. And then we move to the major parts of our service, ready. As we prepare to turn to the next part of the service, I thought we would take a moment to think about our week, to think about some special things that happened in the week. It occurred to me that if we had more high school students here, they're in a different mental place because their spring break's about to end. So for them, Shabbat may be unwelcome. And I imagine if we took a poll for some of the parents, Shabbat might be very welcome. But as this week of spring break comes to a close and things speed up in Fort Worth, does anyone have something? We don't always have a chance to do it, but on this Shabbat, is there something that happened in the last week that you'd like to share with the group? Something joyous, special? Peter?
My son and I completed our first major task of the spring. We have completely redone the rock garden in the backyard.
Peter Levy, the rock garden in the back was redone, father and son. Just repeating it for the microphone. Very nice. Oh, you have one too, Brad?
I got to see cool pictures I've never seen before.
When you were preparing the rock garden? No, a different time. Okay, that's a good thing to be thankful for. We don't always appreciate it. Well, everyone else had a good week. Maybe it wasn't a spectacular week. Maybe you're waiting for the Misha Berach. Maybe you're wishing for a better week. We'll have an opportunity for that as well. But Shabbat brings with us the opportunity of a new week and of rest. And on this Shabbat, when many of our friends will be drinking green beer and doing who knows what tomorrow, I hope however you celebrate, you will find some time to celebrate as well, or just to give thanks for the blessings we have. Even our most challenging times, the gift of another day and the gift of life are worth appreciating, and Shabbat reminds us of that. The Chatzi Kaddish reminds us that Kabbalah Shabbat is over and that the rabbi needs to stop, and then we move forward in the next formal section of our service. So on page 144, as we prepare to call to God, to ask God into our presence, we look to the Chatzi Kaddish. Shemei Rabbah Yalma Divrach Yerutei V'Yamlich Malchutei B'Chayichon U'Yomechon U'Chayi D'Chol Bein Yisrael Magala Uvizman Kari Meru Amen Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Leolam Lo Me'amaya Yivarach Yishtabach Yivar Yitromam Yitnaseh Yitala Shemei Kudusha Rihu Le'am Yivol Bechata V'Shirata Tush Bechata V'Nechemata Damiram Yama V'Miru Amen. Entrances to holiness are everywhere. The possibility of ascent is all the time. Even at unlikely times and through unlikely places, there is no place on earth without the presence. Please rise. We remain standing as we read together on page 148. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim. We join together on page 152. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam. Please be seated as together we read on page 155. Love your God with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act. Keep in mind the words I command you this day. Teach them to your children. Talk about them at work, whether you are tired or you are rested. Let them guide the work of your hands. Keep them in the forefront of your vision. Do not leave them at the doorway of your house or outside your gate. They are reminders to do all of my mitzvot, so that you can be holy for God. I am Adonai, your God. I led you out of Egypt to become your God. I am Adonai, your God. Standing on the parted shores of history, and especially at this time of year, we still believe what we are taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. V'ne'amar ki fada Adonai et Yaakov ugalo miyad chazak mimenu. Baruch atah Adonai Gaal Yisrael. Praised are you, Adonai, who redeems Israel constantly. Page 160. We read together. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace, and raise us up, O guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel, and for your name's sake be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. You, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. Israel, et Shabbat. Shabbat. Please rise as we join together. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Can you hear my voice? Can you hear my prayer? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? La 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 la, 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 la 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 la. Mechakel Chaim b'chesed, Mechaye kol b'rachamim rabim, Somech noch v'rofech cholim, Umatir asurim, Umchayem emunato, Mishenei afar, Michamocha Melech mimi u'mechaye u'matzmiach Yeshua manata l'chayot hakol Baruch ata Adonai mechaye hakol Ta kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom ya'aluch la'selah. Baruch atah Adonai, El HaKadosh. Please be seated as we look to 173. And together, may these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. May this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Now a couple of pages and a moment or two for our own personal prayers. May it be your will, O God, that the words of my mouth and meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, my rock and my redeemer. Last week I talked about every year there's some new idea that engages me. This is not actually a sermon, but a segue, because I can sense you all closing your books. I shared an idea last week. For those of you who weren't there, it's appropriate now. There's always at least one new idea about Passover that catches my eye. And the one I've thought about most this year is the fact that Passover is the only holiday in which we say a blessing over something broken. If you know the laws of Jewish worship, you know the candle's supposed to be new, the challah is supposed to be whole. By the way, if you have broken pieces of bread at home, still make motzi. But in a technically perfect world, it's supposed to be a new cup of wine and a whole challah. And everything else is supposed to be complete. But at Passover, we take a piece of matzah and we break it in half, and then we say the blessing over bread. And then we hide the other piece, and only at the end of the Seder, when we are praying for a perfect time when there's no longer brokenness in the world, do we eat the missing piece. It's a unique thing. So Passover is a holiday that says we're not there yet, and the world isn't there, and there's a lot to do. Some days there's a lot to do when healing's involved. And the Misha Berach, maybe it's never been called this before, but it's the prayer of the broken matzah. It's the prayer that says there is still pain, and there's illness, and there is less than wholeness. And we bring our tears, and we bring our broken matzah, and we pray for a time when we are whole. And so on this Shabbat, we mention the names of Kelly Webb and Annette Dover, Frank Dover, Charlotte Fiwas, Corinne Jacobson, Lita Marashak, George Berger, Leslie Arnov, Stacy Lewis, Alan Lusky, Charlie Freed, Rick Simon, Jeffrey Marks, Robert Klein, Patrick Cooney, Arthur Letterman, Margie Cutler, Susan Schultz, Susan Smith, Elliot Blumberg, Arlene Reynolds, Cynthia Gilbert, Evelyn Siegel, and any names you might wish to add as I look at you.
Myrna Antonich and Nicole Saba.
Jimmy Allen.
William Westerman.
Ethan Stein, Mark Simon, Charlotte Dean.
Thank you.
Louise Ryder, Bill Derrick.
Rich Witek Sr.
Page 371. Bless the ones before us. Help us with courage to make our lives a blessing. And let us say, Amen. Those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Thank you to our choir. So, it's 2 weeks till Passover, exactly. And as a lot of you know, I can never resist an opportunity to talk about the Passover Haggadah. I love it so much. I spent a year on it, working on my thesis. But the anecdotes and the new discoveries never end. So every year you can go back and pick up a new Haggadah. There's always some new explanation or reason. And next week is Shabbat Hagadol. It's the Great Shabbat, it's called, before Passover. Some suggest it's called the Great Shabbat because it was believed that the Messianic age would come heralded in at Passover. So this was the Shabbat that welcomed it in our midst. Also, the Great Shabbat, some suggest, because it was a very long Shabbat, because it was originally one of only 2 times during the year. Many, many years ago when the rabbi gave a sermon. So there was a long, long sermon. There are other reasons given. One is that it's a scribal error. And Shabbat Hagadol was originally Shabbat Haggadah. And it was the Shabbat of understanding the Haggadah. Now, next Shabbat, Rabbi Mecklenburg will be back with us. and my best friend from college's son is having his bar mitzvah. But I can't resist the opportunity, any opportunity to talk about the Haggadah. I'm sure Rabbi Mecklenburger might have more to share as well. So I want to share two things, and then at the Oneg Shabbat, feel free if you want some new material for your Seder. And also a shout out that if you haven't RSVP'd, go online, RSVP for the Congregational Seder. We really do fill the whole social hall. I want to say every year. We certainly did last year. And I want Linda to raise her hand because Linda's been cooking like on weekends with a team. I guess some of your teams here. They're here. They've been cooking all weekend and freezing and cooking and freezing. So it's going to be a wonderful Seder. I think it's going to be a wonderful Seder. You'll have to ask someone who was here last year if it was a wonderful Seder. I certainly had a good time. So that was one of us out of 200. But I would like to just share two ideas for your own home Seders. The first, which I've shared before, but I have to repeat it, is that Passover is a holiday of deception. And what I mean by that is that nothing is as it appears at the Passover Seder. Okay? So, the maror looks pretty good, but it hits you, right? If you have a guest at your Seder, you don't tell them about the horseradish, you don't tell them about that little white herb, they're not going to know it, right? So one of the most appetizing things on the plate is actually one of the strongest and most bitter. The charoset, which is delicious, looks terrible. Maybe your charoset looks good. I've never seen charoset that I didn't have to talk a guest at my Seder into trying. So the bricks and mortar, the thing we'd be least likely to eat, is actually the nicest thing on the table. Matzah, which has been called the bread of oppression, I'm not going to get into now except to say that once you start eating matzah, you really can't stop. Matzah in that sense is both appealing and off-putting. It is the bread of slavery. We regret eating it, and yet how many people have found themselves sitting in front of a box and saying, why am I doing this, right? So all the symbols, the egg, and not the soft-boiled egg, the hard-boiled roasted egg, and the bone on our Seder plate, which are reminders of the once glorious sacrificial Passover. When the sacrificial offering, the Passover offering, the lamb was offered, when a family would eat a whole lamb was the highlight. It was the pinnacle, and yet, it's another thing you don't want to touch on your Seder plate. We go on and on. The salty water, the tears of the Israelites. If someone didn't know better, they wouldn't know, right? You would dip it, and if you really add a lot of salt to your water, you might say, well, I like salty water, but it's supposed to really be unpleasant salty in case you're not adding enough salt. So, again, we could go through the entire Seder. There are all these illusions. Things are the opposite of what they appear, just like freedom. How many people have been willing to give up their freedom? The story of the Israelites through the desert is the story of a people willing to forget how oppressed they were at a moment's notice because they're scared, legitimately, because they're hungry, because they're afraid. And so the symbols of the Seder are meant to deceive us, to trick us, and to remind us that freedom and slavery are not always as they appear. It's easy to choose to be a slave to something of our own free will in the quest for freedom. I won't go further into that. I'll let you consider for your Seder. But I also learned one other nice piece that I want to share with you. So, why charoset? Well, charoset, they say, is supposed to look like bricks and mortar. Charoset is also a replacement. It is a replacement for the Passover offering. When the temple stood in Jerusalem, they would eat their offering with their matzah, with their bitter herb, and that was the Paschal sandwich. When the temple was destroyed, instead, Hillel gets the quote, whether it's Hillel, but gets the credit for saying take bitter herb and take charoset and take matzah. So the charoset, the symbol of the mortar, is now a substitute for the Passover sacrifice. That's one reason for charoset. Rabbi Mordechai Yosef Leiner of Izbika, I'm not pronouncing it right, which is a town in Poland, rabbi from the mid-1800s, says the reason you eat charoset is because of the apples. Now, if you pause for a moment, there are a couple of problems here. First, it's a sort of Ashkenazic Eastern European snobbery, because we know there are lots of other Jews who make charoset lots of other ways, and they don't use apple. But for Rabbi Mordechai Yosef, who lived in Poland 150 years ago, it's okay. He didn't know there were other ways to make charoset. And he says, again, this is his take on it, the real reason that we eat the apple is because, go with me on this, because there is a midrash, there is a story that says that when the Jews were slaves in Egypt, Pharaoh's plan for destroying the Jewish people was to work the Israelites so hard that the Jewish men would no longer have any desire for their wives. They'd be exhausted because they're slaves. They'd be tired. And therefore, the Jewish people would cease to exist. That's one form of oppression. We're going to remember, they're too mighty and many for us. We have to get rid of them. Right? And so, as this midrash goes, the Israelite women would lure the Israelite men out to apple trees. And then they would discover their love for each other once again, and therefore we put apples in charoset. That's a nice explanation. If that's enough for you, share that at your Seder. It's a reminder of the temptations of the women who saved the Israelite men, and it's on their behalf that they lured them, that we had future generations of Jews. Now I'm going to give you one more interesting piece. Rabbi Mordechai Yosef Lehner is known for his theology that nothing created is bad. Nothing in the world is bad because it all came from God. You don't have to agree, but just take his idea for a moment. Therefore, Korach, therefore Pharaoh, therefore any figure you want served some righteous purpose, including the apple. So in the 1800s in Poland, Rabbi Mordechai Yosef Lehner isn't just talking about charoset. He's saying, in a way that won't get him in trouble with his neighbors, there is no original sin, and the apple in your art isn't bad, and all things created are for holiness and good, including the little apple under the apple tree that saved the Jewish people. So if nothing else, you have a great new story for your Passover Seder. Let's turn to, and by the way, I have lots more of this. If you want to give me the Oneg Shabbat, I'll give you more material for your Seder. Page 586. We move from memory, the memory of the Exodus, to looking forward, a time of redemption when war and pain, poverty and hate are but a memory. We rise before the open ark for Aleinu. Please be seated. We turn to page 594. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be and know to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. We remember the recent death in this past 30-day period of mourning, Shloshim, of Ted Hoffman. To remember the yard sites, the anniversaries of their deaths. We rise as we hear their name of Dennis Alter, Francis Appelman, Leon Berenson, Otto Berlin, Cecilia Bressert, Doris Bronstein, Helen Blaztek, Kevin Capper, Willa Christie, Ned Covitt, Cecile Weinschenker-Echt, Flory Epstein, Samuel I. Fenton, Samuel Fryer, Mona Rothschild Friedberg, Adeline Friedman, Saul R. Gale, Robert Goldblum, Celia Goldstucker, Ira Gordon, Selma Greenberg, Isaac Harris, Marilyn Hoffman, Philip Jacobson, Marina Jarmiello Yalevi, Otto Kuhn, Marjorie Lemire, Catherine Harper Lassater, Louise Lipschitz, Herman Mann, Frank Mireshka, Jeremy Moss, Frank Mura, Dorothy Pellberg, Edmund Rothschild, Rose Schloss, Kathy T. Schuller, Frank Schweider, Emmanuel A. Siegel, Samuel Freilich Simon, Henry E. Sloter, Bennett Smith, Betty Mae Stein, Lily Switzman, Harry Tedder, David L. Toby, Bernard Joseph Wallen, Morton Wasserman, Shirley Wasserman, Bertha Weinbaum, Joseph Weisberg. We bring support to those who stand as we rise. For those with none to say Kaddish for them but us, page 598. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, bi'almal divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, b'agalal v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam l'omei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitala shmei d'kudsha b'rechu, leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, damiram bi'almal v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, Hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam levracha, may all of their memories be a blessing as long as we remember them. And together we say, amen. Please be seated. After our closing song, we'll join together in the blessing over wine and challah here from the bima. We invite up, I can see at least one person will invite up, but anyone who, I'm going to have an open invitation if you feel like you want. It might be grape juice today. But feel free to join us in the beam, maybe with something to celebrate, or maybe you're just glad it's Shabbat. Not yet, but you can come sing with me. Come on up. Our closing song is just to get you in the mood. All right? To get you in the mood. And I'm going to give you a clue. I'm going to get you in the mood. It's a song that speaks about graciousness and gratitude at a time when that seems to be absent from the story. But some of us also think it may just have been an old drinking song. So you can find Diana inside your sheet. And in honor for our Kiddush, I brought a glass of green beer, because we know many of our friends over here will shake it up for you. All right? Here we go so they can see. We can join together in Dayenu. Hotzianu min Mitzrayim, Yotzianu Mitzrayim Dayenu 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 Dayenu. You can do it. Dayenu 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 Dayenu. You know this part. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Elu natan natan lanu natan la etator natan lanu etator dayenu 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 dayenu. Have you noticed there's no ilu natan lanu et hamatzah? I'm sorry. Only you'd given us matzah would have been enough. But we still get to eat bread, which I'm sure is confusing you. On page 123, we come to our blessings for wine and challah. Please rise. All right, thank you for coming. So we appreciate it. Here we go.
Did you get that?
Here you go, sir. Join together in the blessing over wine. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam boreinu b'nagafim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kosho v'yahava u'ratzon inhilanu. I don't know. Either of those will work. L'chaim. We join together in the blessing over bread. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu. Perfect. You're ready to go. Amotzi lechem Amen. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Thank you. There you go. Bring it out. There you go. There you go.
All right. Good
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.